Okay, for those of you who wanted me to do my boiler video, well, here we are. We're in my basement, and as you can see, this is a relatively large boiler. This is a commercial boiler. This boiler heats up approximately 72 to 73 families. This is a steam boiler. This is a one-pipe heating system. The grade of fuel that I burn is number 6 oil, which is the heaviest, thickest, nastiest grade of oil that you can possibly burn. Just to give you a quick description on what this oil actually looks like, honestly, if you can avoid dealing with this type of oil, I would do so in a hurry. Okay, this is the number 6 oil. Looks like almost like a black tar. It's thick as hell, has a heavy residue. This is my strainer cup or my strainer basket where I put my strainers in to clean it. This is the strainers that I use to actually clean, strain the oil to remove of any dirt and deposits. Currently I have the pump as well as the boiler off for this presentation, which I will be turning it back on in a short period of time. I might actually have to do a 3-series video to this because this might take a little while. Alright, so let me just explain to you briefly what you're looking at. This right here, this compartment here, is a burner, or better yet, the blower motor. Inside of this is a nozzle that pretty much projects the oil inside of the combustion chamber, which is right here. This is actually rather hot as hell, so I'm not going to touch it for too long. I don't want to get the hell burned out of it. But also, just getting a quick description on this boiler. This system is a one-pipe steam heating system. If you take a look, this boiler does heat and also domestic hot water. This contraption that I'm zooming in right now, this is the tankless coil for the domestic hot water. This is how the building gets its hot water as well. Now, a lot of people would wonder, how is it that you can get hot water out of a boiler as well as the heat without mixing the two waters? And I'm going to explain that right now, because you see, with this section here, there's an element, basically a coil that extracts hot water or extracts heat from the hot water inside of the boiler. If you take a look at the sight glass, the water level is usually about up to here, or right above the element itself. And the rest of it is the drum for the steam. Now, if you take a good look at the sight glass, which I'm going to have to disconnect the camera one more time again, or might have to do it several times, whatever it takes. But if you take a look at the sight glass, which is over here, you can see that I have an automatic water feed hooked up to it. The plumbing work is shitty as hell because the plumber that we had do the work did a very fucked up job. And honestly, I don't recommend it to nobody. But nevertheless, you can see that the sight glass shows the water right above this element for the hot water for the boiler, for this tankless coil. Also known as a heat exchanger. And you also can see that there is an automatic water feed with low water cutoff. Now, this is a device that should be bled out once a week. I bleed it out once a week or sometimes twice a week. I usually do it with the burner on. Since I already did it with the burner on, I'm not going to do it with the burner on again, so I'm going to bleed it out for you. This is currently piped into my drainage system, which takes the water back to a sump pump pit, and the sump pump distributes it or disperses the water into the sewer. Now, normally I tend to do this about 3 good times to establish that the water comes back inside of this sight glass clean, or cleaner than what it normally would if you did it just once. Now, taking a look at this number 6 oil burner, there's a couple of compartments that are on here. I have my oil pressure gauge, which tells me how much oil is in the line. Currently I have it off, so it's not going to register at anything. I also have a temperature gauge for the oil. Now, the next thing that I want to make clear, before you can actually run a number 6 oil boiler, there's several different phases that the oil must go through. The oil must go through a primary heat phase where the tank is heated up to about 100 degrees to 120 degrees, if I'm not mistaken, Fahrenheit. And then you have the preheater that heats the oil directly before it gets ignites into the burner. So let me show you exactly what we're looking at. Oil pump once again. And of course, there's a bunch of different pipes here, which nobody knows where the hell they're going to if you've never seen the inside of this, but I know where each and every one of these pipes go to. But I'll get to that in a minute. This right here is my sidearm heater, okay? If you take a look at this sidearm heater is just basically a heat exchanger. And basically how it works is it works off of hot water in the boiler. I keep the boiler at about 200 degrees since I'm burning number 6 oil, and I have a circulator pump that constantly recirculates or moves water up into the sidearm heater and back into the boiler, which keeps this at a certain temperature. And it also, what you have in this scenario here is very similar to the coil that I showed you on front of the boiler that makes the domestic hot water, is that oil flows through coils or tubes inside of this sidearm heater and exchanges heat. It's a 2-pass sidearm heater, so you have the oil flow going from the top back down to the bottom and back into the oil tank, and one goes also into the burner. Also, now, as far as this contraption here is the hot water, the domestic hot water system, which has a circulator pump that constantly circulates water throughout the building. Because you got such a big building, you can't just use water pressure alone to keep the water hot. It'll take very long to get the water heated the way it should be. Unfortunately, we have these gate valves, which are terrible valves. I recommend nobody use them at all. And unfortunately, I do have them on many different parts of the boiler. The valves that I do recommend, however, are this valve here, ball valves, which are actually excellent recommendation. If you take a look at the top of the boiler, you'll see that there's 2 components up there. Now, these are emergency pressure relief valves. These pressure relief valves will work in the event of an emergency. And in the event of an emergency, those pressure relief valves, say that boiler doesn't shut down from too much steam pressure or water pressure, those pressure relief valves will open up and disperse of the excess steam pressure or water pressure and discharge it to a safe location. Obviously, the location would be on the opposite wall since there's no one ever over there and there's not enough space for anybody to get there in the first place. So that's where it's discharged at. Not one time I've ever had that problem, but they're there for safety precautions. Now, this here, what you're looking at, is the smoke man. This is basically a light that flashes through on the opposite side. What you're looking at here is a sensor that picks up on that light. And the light that we're looking at is right over here. Now, for whatever reason, if that light were to go dim when the boiler is in operation, that'll basically tell the sensor that the boiler is smoking. And after a minute, or I think about 2 minutes if I'm not mistaken, it'll shut the entire boiler operation off. The next compartment that you're looking at here is the damper, which basically is a efficiency setting for the boiler. And basically, when the burner is on, this device here should close, but I think it got to be mounted because I think it kind of came out of loose or got a little out of whack over being banged up for so many years. So when the burner is on, this thing will close, and when it's off, it'll pretty much open, so the chimney can pull the exhaust air from the room rather than taking it out of the boiler, which would cause efficiency loss or heat loss in your boiler. This compartment here is also a smoke bonnet. This is just another section of the boiler where basically the smoke goes through before its final pass, right before it leaves the boiler altogether. One other good device to have in a building is this, a platinum heat timer. This is a heat timer that is built specifically for the preservation of oil, so you don't burn up as much oil as you should, or that it would if you was just running the boiler relentlessly. Now, if you take a close look at this thing is actually calling for heat right now, and I'm going to set it back up. I'm going to better yet send up steam in just a little while. But before I do that, I still want to give more descriptions on this boiler. Okay, I'm probably going to have to do a part 2 of this video. But what you basically have is a steam heating system, the 1-pipe steam heating system, and I'm going to show you a description of these gadgets or these devices that are on top of the boiler. Now, if you take a look at these devices, a lot of people are under the impression that a boiler of this size, this would have to be none other than a high-pressure steam boiler, which is completely incorrect. Because anytime you're dealing with a boiler, boilers never operate at high-pressure steam unless you're dealing with a power plant. or even if the boilers are high pressure steam, they do not send up steam into the building at high pressure. And since this boiler is located in this very same building that it is heating, it is never going to be high pressure. The maximum amount of pounds per square inch that I run is at 5 pounds of pressure. Now you can see the pressure gauge right here. Okay. Usually on average I'll burn only 2.5 to 3 pounds of steam pressure to get it up to 6 stories, and it'll heat the building up just fine. Now that right there is the pressure gauge. What you have over here are pressure trolls. Okay, these are 4 different pressure trolls. One of them has been discontinued due to the new timer system that has been put into the building or been installed into the building. And if I'm not mistaken, let me point it out to you right now. Okay. The one on my far left over here, this is the manual pressure reset. This has a little button on it. I'm gonna zoom in on it for you right now so you can take a look. This is pretty much the one that has shut down the entire operation. If you can get a good look, there's a little button. I might have to take the lens off. Give me a second. Okay, that should be a little better. All right. Okay, it'll stay right there. Now this is the one that will shut down the boiler if it reaches beyond steam pressure. If none of these other pressure trolls shut the boiler off, it will pretty much shut the boiler down, and you will have to pretty much go up there manually and reset this device. Now there's one other one over here, and this works in conjunction with the burner. Remember how I said I mainly operate at about 3 pounds of steam pressure, and this is the modulating motor. This basically works in conjunction with this burner down here that you see. And basically when the burner brings the boiler steam pressure to about 2.5 or 3 pounds of pressure, the burner, instead of it shutting off, what it'll basically do is it'll just modulate and keep the boiler steam at 2.5 to 3 pounds of steam pressure, and it'll just basically decrease the flames. See, what we basically have on a burner this size is a modulating motor. There's a photocell lens inside of it, things that pick up on the operation to make sure that it's a smooth operation. Now, for any reason, if one of these things fail to comply, the operation is shut down immediately. It is due to safety precautions and due to the event of preventing explosions from happening. So basically with that one, the pressure troll that you were looking at, that's the modulating, that's hooked up to the modulating motor, which basically will work in conjunction with that modulating motor. The next one here, this was for the last timer that we had, which basically was a heat circulation establishment point or set point for the boiler, which that's no longer in use. So let's bring you to the next one over here. And this one is basically, this will pretty much stop the boiler operation at 5 pounds of steam pressure. This pretty much is the next one in line. So once that boiler reaches 5 pounds of steam pressure, it'll shut it off and then it'll kick it back on at about 4 pounds or 3.5 psi, and it'll basically just keep on letting the steam go up and down until the heat cycle is shut down. And the last one that you see over there is pretty much the manual pressure reset, which will shut the boiler down completely altogether. And the only way you'll be able to get it fired back up is if you go up there and if you click the button and get it to reset. This video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to have to do another one. So stay tuned.